Well, g'day, Max here again. Welcome back to the shop. And just a random machining video. Just finishing off this pen, and we have some half clamps to make as well. So I'll put that in as well. But yeah, I don't always get the opportunity to get any footage of some of my other jobs. It's basically it comes down to like time constraints during so I've got to get them in and out. So more often than not, it doesn't happen. But I get the occasional one in. So I have time up my sleeve for this one because it's not a rush job. I brought some new brushes the other day for cleaning the machines, and talk about being stitched up like a kipper, bloody Chinese. When you order a 2-inch brush, you expect it to be 2 inches wide, not 1 3/4 inches wide, but it still says 2 inches. So these V-blocks that I made some time ago, I've got a video on it, have been absolutely worth their weight in gold. So they're all keyed to fit all of my machines. I still have to make keys for the horizontal borer, but I'll do that when it's required. Drilled to suit multiple applications, like if you want to mount them vertically on a angle plate or something like that. Also drilled and tapped for a strap clamp along the top, but absolutely worth their weight in gold. Also has the slot so you can clamp anywhere along here with toe clamps or whatever. If you're using them maybe without the keys, they could be sitting on an angle on your on your table or anything like that. So this piece, we've just drilled the hole in the end and cut to length. Has got to go back into the lathe to be faced and chamfered on this end here. So we need the steady rest, as this will not fit up the spout of my lathe. And to the uninitiated, that is the spout. And mine is 80 millimeters and that bar is 100 millimeters. So I use a quick shortcut to set up our steady rest, because if we don't do it correctly or near enough, that long pin will want to start walking out of the chuck, and it can happen. I'll just nip down the plate. With a shifter. And start our lathe up and just adjust the fingers in. Make sure the chuck's not going to hit anything, because there's locking screws on the rear to lock the fingers. We can just bring our fingers in now just till we get contact. Okay, it's where we need to be. Slacken the chuck off. Remove that and remove that. This is our offcut, so I know our diameters are exactly the same as the part that this will be running on. So we'll back the top one off again, but I'll re-clamp that once we're up and running. Get her in gear. Okay, all good. And looks like we're a tad below centre. Get a bit more angle on that chamfer. I hit the tool on that as the lathe was slowing down just to ease that chatter. It's a pretty wide area on a steady rest. So. Okay, quick touch with the file. Okay, that's this job done. Let's move on with our split collars. And if you're new to the channel, a while back I did a short series, I think it's only like 3 parts, something like that, of how I modified this steady rest to fit this lathe, and also made up the new fingers with the double bearing arrangement in them. Yeah, there's a fair bit of machining, just as we took a great big piece out the middle there to make it fit, and yeah, a lot of modifications, but it came out 100% rock solid. So yeah, interesting little series, that one. Right, I've just got our material now for the split collars. It's E470 hollow bar, just your standard hollow bar. And that's 1045, that's for something else later on. So we'll get these in the lathe and get them faced off to width, and then we've got to cut them in half. There's holes to be drilled and tapped, ID, OD to be machined. So we got the glamorous job of facing all these to length. First up, I had them cut at 35mm. This one's cut a bit wonky. Our finished size is 30mm, but yeah, I always like to leave that 5mm leeway. That's 2.5mm, 100th hour side, you know, just in case. Perfect. All right, we'll get this one out and look at our next operation. So I'll probably look at something along the lines of splitting them in half. Probably do that with a saw, and then we can machine flat these faces. Hold each half in the vise and get these holes drilled and tapped. This one will have to be inverted because that's a counter bore for a socketed cap screw. And get a centre line marked down here. What I'm thinking is we might be able to put these in the casto and cut them all at once. I'll just do a freehand scribed. Something to represent the width of the blade-ish. I've got a bit to play with on the bore. These got to finish at 100 millimeters, just under 100 millimeters. There'll be interference on 100, so these are 80. So we've got 20 millimeters to play with the bore, 10 mil aside, and we've got a couple of mil up our sleeve with the OD, so I think we'll be pretty right. I'll see if I can get these. Yeah, it would be really good if we could just set these up in the casto and just chop the whole lot through at once. Alright, this turned out to be a very quick and easy setup, to the point where I'm not too bothered if we don't, well, we're not going to make it all the way through the last one, but we'll just see how we go when we get there. We'll get through the first three. I don't want to start cutting into my pallet here, so we'll just see how we go, and then we'll deal with what's left at the end, whether we just invert the stack, you know, just put a couple that we've already cut under the what didn't cut. It's nothing to set it up again. And I've just lowered the blade down onto our scribe lines, and we're cutting in the right spot, so everything's looking good from this side. And into the jaws, yeah, a couple of gudgeon pins or wrist pins depending on where you come from, a couple of strap clamps, and I think we're going to be good to go here. Okay. Yeah, it's just getting jammed on that top Top one there. I'll slacken the clamps off. We actually got most of the way, fair bit of the way through that lower one. So I'll slacken the clamps off, let the saw up. Okay, see what we got. Just going to mark these before I mix them all up, just in case. And I'll mark the rear ones as well. We might be able to finish that last one off just with a cut-off disc on the grinder, and that's going to be the quickest way, I think. Yeah, we'll just nip this in half with the cut-off disc. Cool. So my plan was actually to put a sacrificial bit underneath it, but then I forgot. No worries, we'll just nip that last one in half with the grinder. Okay, we'll give these a tizzy up with the belt sander. Our halves match up pretty good, so yeah, good stuff. The vise is lacking on a bit of length to grab all 8 parts. Otherwise I would have done all 8 at once, milled them, drilled them and do what we have to do. But on this curved vise I've had to put the spacer in because on the nut there's a little bit of a knob which sort of sits, it doesn't stick proud, of the vice rails. It does sit below, but when you've got a round piece sitting down onto it, it contacts it. If I remember, I'll get a shot of it when I pull these ones out. So I'm just going to pick up on the edge here, get our centre, just going to edge find off the OD, enter all that into the DRO, put our face mill in, and then do our holes. 4 are drilled and tapped and 4 are drilled for clearance. So if I enter all the info in now, saves me a bit of deburring after they've been face milled. It's not going to dimensionally change anything. We're just levelling up the tops. So we just need a clean up cut along these. It doesn't really matter what we take off as long as we take something off and they're all cleaned up. I think those insets are starting to get a bit long in the tooth. Yeah, I think I'll change them. There's quite a bit of heat in that, and there shouldn't be as much heat as what there is in that. Yeah, I'll rotate them out. Yeah, they've done a ton of work, these inserts, and they're not all smashed and completely, when the edges are a bit dull on them. Man, that'd still be fine for mild steel. But this is a pretty good machining material anyway, the E470. Yeah, I think I'll rotate them around. We'll see how these ones go. They're on their last rotation pretty well, but what I'll do is take them out of this cutter on the Bridgeport and they'll go into one of the bigger cutters on Olga, big Russian mill, because she doesn't really care the conditions of the inserts. She just keeps cutting. She doesn't even care if there's inserts in. She'll just keep trying to cut. Whereas the old Bridgeport here, she's a bit more, doesn't quite have the rigidity the same as what big Olga has. So I'll just take a fraction more off that. That's a whole heap better. That's perfect. Okay, we'll scoot over to the other side. And drop our knee down a bit. We'll probably do this in 2 cuts. So I'll get this swapped out for a drill chuck and we'll spot drill where we need to drill. I'm pretty sure we're working on 120mm centres, but I'll just have to consult the drawing for that one. So yeah, because we've already centred in before we started, off here and off this front face, we can just go to where we need to go directly, reading off the DRO now. If I hadn't have done that, I would have had to deburr all these edges now, and that may have created a bit more of a flat on these outsides. Probably not enough to worry about for when we re-edge found. So, right, let's get the drill chuck in. So this half of the clamp, we're going to drill them all 12mm in preparation for tapping M14 by 2mm pitch thread. So we'll drill countersink just to break the edges, and then probably use a tapping head to run the tap through. We just have to be careful when it breaks through the edge. Actually, I'm just going to have a little alteration here to the original plan. I'm going to pull up before we break through, and I've just had a look on the drawing, and I can make this one a blind hole. That means all the water and crap's not going to get in there and rust up and seize up that bolt when it's in use. So I think I'll roll that way with them. So let me get the rest of these drilled. run the countersink through these now in preparation for tapping. We'll just use our depth stop so they're all the same. For the first one, we'll just have a bit of a poke around and give it the required adjustment as necessary. Should slow our speed down. I'll drop her into back gear. Something like that. It's about 100 RPM. Tad more. Tad more. Tad more. Fraction more. I just want slightly bigger than the thread. Just make sure that's, yeah, bastard wasn't. I thought I felt it move. Just making sure it's all the way up and seated because they can dick you around a bit if they move. Come back down, back up onto it. Ideally, something about 15 millimeters would be fine. About where we are there. Perfect. Okay, let's run all these through. Well, another future project, and that will be to make a R8 arbor for this tapping head, because this one here, this Morse taper adapter, is just way too long, takes up all the Z height, and I'm missing out by about 20 millimeters to comfortably get my tap in. So that sucks. And my smaller tapping head, well, she just ain't going to take it. So we've had no option bar hold the tap in the collet. I hate tapping this way with blind holes. You've got to be really careful, because when I reverse the machine to come back out, it takes approximately 3 revolutions from the time I hit reverse to the time it actually stops and goes into reverse. So that means that's an extra 6 millimeters of travel. So that's something you've got to be careful of so you don't bottom the tap out. So if I just tap down to the very end of the thread on the tap here, hit reverse, I've got 6 millimeters, it'll keep going. That leaves 5 millimeters up my sleeve. So we're going to be running close. So see how we go. I'll probably chicken out and stop a couple of threads just before, just to err on the side of caution, because it's a lot easier to run a tap down by hand at the end than to try and get a broken tap out. Okay, that one went fine, no problems. So we'll do the rest the same. Just test our cap screw in there. That's all good, beautiful. Plenty of lube. I suppose if I adjusted up the VFD, that I don't know if you can actually do that with a reversing cycle, whether it will break quicker or not, I'm not sure. Okay, that's all of the milling and drilling for the first four, and we need to get set up for the second four. So I'll get these ones out and get these ones in and get these ones to the same stage as these ones, all except the well, they won't have a tapped hole, they will have a 15mm hole drilled through. So I'll do all that off camera because it's going to be the same, but I'll bring you back when we go to counterbore the other side for the cap screws, and then of course there's the lathe work to bore them out and machine the outsides. While we're here, that's that knobby thing I was talking about earlier on, and yeah, it just interferes with the part, the way I have them just resting in the vice rails there. And if you want to know why, apart from the cost and the obvious, why these vices here are so much better than those cheap Chinese ones, as you see with these ones, see how the screw's sticking out the end of the nut? Well, that causes no end of issues with them binding up and jamming. A right pain in the ass. I've already stripped these down twice now to clean, you know, with issues to do with that. Whereas a proper machine vise has a full shield coverage over that screw, so it never happens. I mean, I stripped this vise down a few weeks back, but that's the first time in 10 years since I've stripped it down. And it just keeps working and working, and it just never gives an ounce of trouble. I'm not sure if my one here is a real old one or not, because I don't know what the serial numbers go to the years, but I think I've only ever seen one other one that doesn't have the protruding keyway all the way through on the fixed jaw, so it might denote something to its age. But that being said, it is still in A1 condition. Well, that's all of our drilling and chamfering the corners completed on this one, or these four. So I'll get them out, get them bolted together, or deburred, bolted together. We'll head over to the lathe and we can do the ID, the OD, and then we'll come back into the mill as we have to counterbore these holes here for the heads of these socket head cap screws. So the slot drill I'm going to use for those probably won't be happy entering in on angles like that, but it should take it, no worries. We'll see. But that will have to wait until part 2, as we're coming up on time now. So yeah, cheers, thanks for watching, and yeah, part 2 we will get right in and finish off our split clamps. Cheers.